All right, so I am Whitney Cole, and I'm here today to talk to you about how I help health tech and digital health companies break their missions and messages through the noise. The thing is, though, that what I'm going to share with you today, it doesn't have to be just for health tech. So anyone in any industry, whether you're a small business owner, whether you work at a large company, this can work for you as well. First, though, I have to go back to the beginning, where most stories start. My story starts, obviously, when I was born, but it took a drastic change when I was 3 days old. And 3 days old, you know that appointment where the pediatrician checks you out and makes sure you're healthy, and then hands you off to your parents, and your parents are like, what do we do with this thing? At that appointment, I didn't actually get to go home with my parents that day because they found that I did not have a pulse in my leg, and the pediatrician was like, well, it could be something, it could be nothing, but we're gonna send her for extra testing. And I am so glad he did, because what they found is that I had congenital aortic stenosis, which for those of you who are not doctors or nurses or into medicine at all, that means my body wasn't going to get the blood that it needed to survive. So if I had gone home that day, I would have gotten very sick, or I would have passed away fairly quickly. So because of my story, it's only natural that I grew up wanting to be a doctor, right? I wanted to be a pediatric cardiologist because I wanted to help other kids out there who were just like me. And then I took high school biology, and I had to dissect a frog, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this. So I realized, though, that even if I wasn't good at science and all of that stuff, I was good at writing. I was good at telling stories. So I went to college as an English major. I love to read. I love to write. It seemed to make sense. But I was always a little bit disappointed in myself because I didn't think I was going to be able to help people the way a doctor could. And I was a little jealous of my friends who were biology majors and pre-med majors, because it seemed to me that they had this very set career trajectory. People told me as an English major that my two choices were to either be a teacher or an insurance salesperson. And I'm so thankful for the people that taught me my whole life and that sell me my insurance, but it just wasn't a career I wanted for myself. So I did the thing where you flounder around and try to figure out what you want to do with your life. And eventually, after college, I landed in a job as a content strategist. And it was like this whole new world opened to me, because a content strategist is a person who uses words to tell stories to grow businesses. And I thought that was so awesome. I could use my gifts, and I could help businesses grow. So in this job as a content strategist, I did a lot of research because it's like this new thing for me. I had never done this before. I didn't even really know what marketing was because I was an English major. I read Shakespeare. I'm like the one person in the room who is the Shakespeare fan. But so I studied marketing. I learned a ton, and I learned hands-on because I was having to do this in my day-to-day job. And then a couple years later, I had my first daughter. And like any hormonal postpartum mother wants to do, but probably shouldn't, I quit my job and started a business 3 weeks later. And it was good. It was a roller coaster. I was learning how to be a mom. I was learning how to run a business. So there were lots of ups and downs. I got some clients, and things started to grow a little bit. But I never gained the traction that I could have because I never actually sat down and figured out why I was doing this. I knew I was doing it because I wanted to be home with my daughter. And I also knew I was good at writing, so I thought it just made sense. But I wasn't actually working with people that I was excited about and passionate about. So I worked with a business coach because I knew I had to figure out this why. I knew I had to figure out what my sweet spot was. And it wasn't until I told him about my 3 open heart surgeries. And then I also told him that I really enjoyed working with tech companies who were out to change the world and very mission-driven, and they wanted to make a difference in the world. And he said, Whitney, that's your sweet spot. That's your why, because you want to help people, you want to make a difference, and you can do that through your writing. Because I'm here today because of that pediatrician, several masterful surgeons, and a whole bunch of amazing cardiologists, and then the technology that allowed them to diagnose and treat my condition. And it turns out that we live in an era when technology is rapidly changing how we do healthcare. And these companies that are coming in, they're often tech-first companies. They're coming in and they want to make a difference. They want to make a change. They're building amazing products, and that's what they're really good at. But they struggle to break through the noise. They struggle to get their stories heard. So even though I didn't get to become a doctor and I didn't get to help people the way I thought I wanted to help people, it turns out I get to help the change makers. I get to help the people who are making a difference, who through their technology are saving lives, changing lives, helping people live healthier lives. For those of you who work in healthcare, you know this. For those of you who don't work in healthcare, you've probably experienced it, but the healthcare industry is incredibly complex. And these technology companies that are coming in and trying to make a difference, they struggle to figure out who their buyer is, who are they marketing to, who do they need to tell their stories to. And when they don't know who to tell their story to, when they don't know their customer, that results in a confusing message that doesn't clearly communicate who they are, what they do, the problem they solve, and who they do it for. And that, in turn, means that they can't amplify their message and reach the people who really need them. The result then hurts. It hurts them because their dreams are crushed, their company fails. So this company's like their baby. When it fails, it's a dream ruined. Jobs are lost, wages aren't paid. But then it hurts all of us because at one point or another in our lives, we are all consumers of healthcare, and we have loved ones who are consumers of healthcare. And so if they can't reach the people who need them, if they can't change and build this technology that changes lives, their failure could impact us all. So I'm going to share a story with you. This is a story of a client of mine. I work across B2B and B2C. This one is from B2C, though, because sometimes it's easier to see the direct impact. So this client, her name was Leslie, and she built this fertility tech product. And it allowed women to track their periods to either plan for or prevent pregnancy. And in the US, we're like, well, do we really need that? We have the pill. Like, is that really necessary? But there are millions of women around the globe who, for medical reasons or cultural reasons, social reasons, economic reasons, they don't have access to birth control. And when they don't have access to birth control, when they're not in control of their reproductive health, often, not all the times, but often, that means that they don't go on for education. They don't get good paying jobs, which means they struggle to support their family. And so that impacts them, it impacts their families, it impacts their community. So what Leslie did is she built this app. She has a free version and a paid for version here in the US. She uses the money she makes off the paid for version to invest in building technology for women in the developing world, because they may not have access to birth control, but they do have access to cell phones. So she gives them this technology that gives them control over their reproductive health, and that impacts their lives, their families' lives, and their communities' lives. The problem was that nobody really seemed to listen to Leslie's story. She was struggling to get people to pay attention. She did a lot of digital ads, she did some content creation, she did some PR, but she was struggling to get people to pay attention to her. And when I sat down with her, we quickly discovered why. Her content and her PR messaging was a mix of research, because they were partnered with a lot of research organizations, and company updates, and then really aspirational pieces about this is how we change global health. So it was confusing her perfect customer because they didn't understand what she could do for them and the value she could provide them. So because her content wasn't working, her customers would read it and they'd be like, what is this? I don't understand. So because her content wasn't working, she gave up and dove all her money into the one thing that was working, which was digital ads. Digital ads are great. They have a purpose and they work really well, but when they're your only strategy, you're going to get caught on this vicious cycle. In health tech, I call it the hamster wheel of health tech death, because you have to spend money to get more customers, to spend money to get more customers. It's this vicious cycle, and Leslie was on it and she couldn't get off of it. Because the second she stopped spending money, she stopped getting customers. So we sat down and we figured out who her perfect customer was, what types of content they needed to read, and where to put that content so they could find it. And when we did that, what happened was user adoption and brand awareness skyrocketed. And then her sales from her paid app were up 11%. And then her users that she was getting before with the paid ads, they were shiny object users. So they were here today, they saw the ad, they downloaded it, and then they never engaged with the app. With this content, her user engagement went up 393%. So that means people were actually downloading the app because they wanted and needed it in their lives. So the thing is, this fix that I worked on with Leslie, it works for anyone, like I said before. And here's the basic formula. You have to know your customer. You have to understand what are their problems. And when you understand what their problems are, you can't just understand the problem that you want to help solve. You have to understand the other problems that that problem creates. So like, what's the root problem? And then what are the tactical day-to-day problems that causes, as well as the emotional problems, like what kind of fear, anxiety, stress, worry is this causing them? And then once you understand their problem, you need to look at what change do they want to achieve? What does success look like for them? When you do that, you go out and create this picture of the promised land, and you are the guide that helps them get to that promised land. So know your customer, know them really well. The second thing is create the message and content that drives them to buy. This looks like content that is not focused on you, it's focused on them. It's got to be relentlessly helpful, it has to offer incredible value, and it has to be super simple. If you don't do those things for them, they're going to go find someone who does. And then the final piece is you have to put your content in the right places. You have to be in front of them, flashing in their faces, saying, here I am, I can help you, I can make a difference in your life. Because the reality is your customer is being bombarded with thousands upon thousands of messages a day from social media and from the news industry and from the entertainment industry and from just the people in their day-to-day lives, their email inbox, for crying out loud. They've got so many messages coming at them, and they don't have time to know that you exist. They don't have time to go find you. They may not even know that they have this problem and that someone can solve it for them. So it's your job to be in front of them, grabbing their attention and saying, I can help you, I can make a difference in your life. So to drive customers to your virtual door, you have to stop focusing on you and what you want to say and start focusing on them and what they need to hear. You have to understand their problem, you have to understand how you solve that problem, and then you have to understand how you can get in front of them. And that's all I have for you today. So if you would like to connect with me, I am on LinkedIn a lot. You can find me there. I also have a podcast, so it's geared at health tech, but I give actionable marketing tips. I interview a lot of really cool guests, so feel free to give that a listen. I think the tips that we give in that podcast could work in just about any industry.
Awesome. Well, let's give Whitney a hand.
Should I go sit down?
Okay. So we do ask every presenter, that was fantastic, by the way. I thought it was really helpful, too. I thought your slides with some practical pieces of